Welcome to another edition of A Week of Mass Shootings. All right, we're going to look at the mass shootings from September 18th through September 24th. But before we get to those, we're going to just last week I reported that there were 5, and at the time I had done the video, there were only 5. Within the days after that, 2 more popped up. So our 500th mass shooting was not Denver after all. It was actually Chula, Mississippi, which we'll talk about in a second. And last week I had reported we had gone 3 days without a mass shooting. And with these 2 updates, it turns out it was only 1. I knew there was no chance that we had 3. And with those 2 updates, we had 1. 7 was still not a lot for last week, as this week we had 13, which is more in line of what we should be at, not should be, but what we normally have. So we'll start on September 15th. These first 2 are the makeups from last week that we missed. September 15th, Chula, Mississippi. 1 person was killed and 6 injured, and this is the first one in Chula, Mississippi this year. It happened on MLK Drive, so we know that was a safe area, at the Mix nightclub turned pool hall. And basically that was a drive-by that happened at 11 p.m. On September 17th, in Romeoville, Illinois, 4 were killed. And this is the first one for Romeoville. And it was 2 kids that were aged 7 and 9, and a 32-year-old female and a 38-year-old male. This guy killed the 3 dogs as well. And it was reported as a murder at first, like when the guy kills the whole family and then kills himself. That's how it was originally reported. But they found out there was actually a murderer on that one. All right, so now we start on September 18th in Charlotte, North Carolina. 4 people were injured, and this is the 3rd one in Charlotte this year. And it happened in Uptown, near where there were bars and restaurants, around 2:30 a.m. And all 4 victims drove themselves to the hospital and looked to be okay. Also on September 18th, in Spring Lake, North Carolina, this is the first one for Spring Lake. 1 was killed and 3 injured. And the North Carolina had 2 this same day. They were the only 2 reported on the 18th, and they were both in North Carolina. So we know North Carolina is not smudging their numbers. Our victims were 3 teens and a 42-year-old Angela Gwynn. And this happened around 7:45 p.m., and all 4 shots were inside a car. All 4 of them were shot while they were sitting in a car. And it didn't appear to be random, is what the police said. And they were parked at a house that was empty, that no one was living in. And the neighbors said they heard someone yelling, they're here," before the gunfire started. So these people, all 4 of these people were targeted in some kind of way. Okay, there were none reported as of right now anyway, on the 19th, the 20th, and the 21st. So again, rarely this time of year will we go 3 days without a mass shooting. So possibly next week I'm giving an update saying it was not actually 3 days, and some other ones got reported late or something, and we just haven't heard about them yet. But as of now, there have been none on the 19th, 20th, and 21st. So September 22nd in Pomona, California, 1 was killed and 5 injured. And this is the first one for Pomona this year. And it was a 19-year-old male that was killed at a large block party. Also on September 22nd in Orlando, Florida, 1 was killed and 3 injured. And this is the 4th for Orlando this year. A 22-year-old female, Michaela Queen Patterson, she was the one that was killed. A 23-year-old male was arrested, Delray Shundale Duncan Jr. And all of this happened at 2:30 in the afternoon. Also on September 22nd, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 4 were injured. And this is the 6th one for Minneapolis this year. And it happened at 10:40 p.m. No arrests were made. And the no arrests made, when you hear these in Minneapolis, that is not uncommon. Minneapolis is as bad as Chicago when it comes to no arrests made on things. And at least one of the people that were hit was hit by a stray bullet. It was a complete innocent bystander. September 23rd in Jacksonville, Florida, 3 were killed and 1 injured. And this is the first one for Jacksonville this year. One of the victims killed was a 3-year-old. And it happened at an apartment complex during the sale of a dog. And this marks the 111th homicide this year. Those 3 reached the 111th homicide this year mark for Jacksonville. And at this time last year, they had 118. So then on September 23rd in Downey, California, 4 were injured. And this is, again, the first one for Downey. It happened at the Mambo Grill, and someone opened fire at a bar, and it sounds like there were multiple shooters. September 23rd again, Covington, Tennessee, 5 were injured. Again, the first one for Covington. There were multiple shooters again. Victims inside and outside of this event center during a party, and it happened at 11:15 p.m. Another one on September 23rd. There were a lot on September 23rd. There were 5 of them on September 23rd. This one in Washington, D.C., 1 was killed and 3 injured, and it's the 8th one in Washington, D.C. this year. Blake Bozeman was killed at the Crew Hookah Lounge, and one of the victims was a female. And these hookah lounges, I don't know a whole lot about these hookah lounges. It sounds like it's like an East Coast thing, and I don't know a whole lot about them, but if I lived on the East Coast, I would not go in a hookah lounge because there are a lot of shootings. And if I did a statistic on this, and I should probably start like keeping a track of what the causes of all these are, like, you know, like throughout the year, hookah lounges would get a percentage point of them at least, because there would be a significant number of them. Probably at least 5 a year happen at hookah lounges. Okay, again, September 23rd, Chesapeake, Virginia. 1 was killed and 4 injured, and this is the first one for Chesapeake. A 14-year-old male died, and the other victims, 2 of them were male juveniles and 2 were adult males. And it happened at 5 p.m. in a residential neighborhood, and there are no suspects at all on that one. Then September 23rd in Waianae, Hawaii. 2 were killed and 2 injured. And this is the second one in Hawaii this year. Both of them happened in Waianae. And Hawaii historically is not a state that has mass shootings. So this city, I'm going to have to look into this city because this city must be really bad if they've had 2 mass shootings when literally the whole state never has them. A 29-year-old and a 19-year-old male were killed, and the other victims were an 18-year-old male and a 21-year-old female. And basically this was a fight that escalated to gunfire, and over 20 shots were fired. I don't remember the last one, but I think it was something similar to that where there was a bunch of people somewhere and they just, you know, people start firing guns for no reason these days, and you know, it's over stupid stuff. Okay, we go to September 24th in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. 5 were injured, and this is the 3rd one for OKC this year. And again, this is a fight in a parking lot that escalated to gunfire. And then also on September 24th, Columbia, South Carolina, 3 were killed and 1 was injured. And all 3 of them that were killed were teens aged 16 and 17. And there wasn't much else about that. So those are the 13 that we had this week, and that's more common. This time of year, basically the mid-teens is about what you'd expect. And it's the pace we've been on this year for the mass shootings, we've had 2 weeks that were under 10. And last week was very suspect, at least getting it up to 7 made it a little less suspect, but it's still very suspect. And we're still on a record-breaking pace here. We still can break the 2021 record of 690 in 1 year. And since 2020, we've been over 600 every year. So we're not heading, even if we don't break the record, we're going to be right up there with it. And this is not a good trend to have. And nobody's really doing anything about it. Half of these, if I went through and looked to see how many of them they actually arrested somebody for, I would question if it even gets to 50%. I'm actually good. I'll look that up for I'll look that up for next week's video and get as much information as I can. But I would question if it reaches 50% because most of these are just, unless it happens and it was somebody they knew and the person survives and tells them, they're not catching most of these people. So, but I'll put that down for something to look up for next week. This is a weekly video, so if you like this type of content, hit that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and consider subscribing. And I'll catch you next week.